Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Subtle Asian Voices. I'm today's host, Wendy. And before we start, I want to let everyone know that today is actually World Mental Health Day. And today we're using this opportunity to launch our mental health campaign, which will feature a different episode related to mental health for 6 consecutive weeks, starting from today. Hello, everyone. And today's topic is about mental health and relationships. Now, each of these terms on its own carry a lot of weight, and when combined, creates even more depth and complexity. So we have a lot to uncover today. I'm very, very happy to have our guest Judy here, and she is a professional attorney for divorce and law. And she herself has also gone through quite a lot of different dating and relationship experience and have a lot to share. So Judy, can you take a moment to introduce yourself, your name, location, profession, and relationship status?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Wendy. My name is Judy Singh. I'm Taiwanese American. I live in Cary, North Carolina. I'm an attorney. I have my own practice, which I've had for about 14 years, and I do divorce and custody cases. And I was divorced and remarried, and I'm very happy to be here. Happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Judy. So as we've heard, Judy is very successful in her career, and she's had a lot more life experience than most of us in the audience, probably. And I really think she could bring a mentor type of perspective, especially for us young girls who are less experienced in terms of dating and relationships and marriage and divorce. So Judy, as somebody who's been through it all and has found her lifetime partner and happily married and have kids now. So I think she has good advice to give on the importance of choosing the right partner to ensure healthy relationships down the road. And I want to talk a little bit about why we start the mental health campaign, with the first episode being mental health and relationships. And that's because romantic relationships have so much impact on our lives. Study has shown that when we're in healthy, stable relationships, we're less prone to anxiety, depression, and have better self-esteem, greater empathy, and even better physical health. And on the contrary, having toxic, abusive relationships rarely impact our physical and mental health negatively. And there's just no way an individual could feel healthy and satisfied when they're involved in toxic relationship. So this episode is for us to explore the interconnectivity and the bidirectionality of relationships and mental health. So we're going to discuss a few types of relationship dynamics and its effect on mental health, but we're going to be primarily focusing on toxic relationships, especially the ones involving abuse, emotional abuse. So our guest Judy is very kind to share her personal experience with us. She's very courageous. I applaud her for doing so. And she is going to share an experience that happened to her in her earlier years in college that severely impacted her mental health. Judy, can you please share some details on that relationship?
Okay, sure. It was actually when I was in law school. It was with somebody that I met through a Chinese American young professional club. And the person, seemed very successful and very nice at first and very interested in me. So I felt special. He was also about 10 years older than I was. So he was already established and had money and, just seemed to be like a overall, good catch.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't until later on in the relationship that he started saying things like he still wanted to be able to date other people and keep his options open because he was so old that he needed to hurry up and find someone to marry. So that's why he had to keep his options open and be sure to, be able to date other people, which I was very taken aback because the relationship had already gotten intimate and we were spending all our time together, so I just assumed that we were in this exclusive relationship. But stupid me, I still stayed on with him until towards the very end when I walked in on him having dinner with another woman in his apartment. So that's basically how the whole thing finally ended, but it was for the better.
I see. Yeah, so it sounds like there's a couple factors in here. The fact that he wasn't being transparent, he was being dishonest, and it's almost lying and cheating. Even though you guys didn't define the terms, it is not okay for him to be seeing other people while seeing you without communicating that to you. And so aside from not being honest, are there other examples of how that toxic relationship impacted your mental health at the time?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there were just a bunch of other incidents too where he was kind of disrespectful and just being a crummy person towards me. But for example, he was always looking at other women whenever we would go to these like different events around DC and stuff. I could catch him kind of looking at the other hot looking women. And, then after one event, he actually told me, as if it were no big deal. He was like, oh, so-and-so looked cute tonight. And I'm like, what the hell? Like we're dating and here you are, what kind of person says that? Like, even if you think somebody looks hot at some event, you don't say that to somebody that you're dating. Yeah. So, I mean, there were just like other incidents like that where he would just kind of disrespect me. Like we went out to some like ballroom dance event and I didn't really know how to do the ballroom dancing stuff. So afterwards he was just like saying, yeah, I don't really like going to these things with people who don't know how to ballroom dance. I'm like, once again, it's like, well, why did you invite me to this? You know that I don't really know how to do all this stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it was just like constant little disrespects, and then telling me that I was overweight and I needed to lose weight, and then constantly saying that as if it were not insulting or rude in the slightest. It was just like he was kind of like clueless at times as to how to treat people.
I see. Yeah. Again, I noticed several things in here. One is um, telling you that he is being desirable to other women, but in the most disrespectful way to make himself feel better, to make himself feel like he's the one that's the reach for you. And that is a manipulative behavior. And also the fact that you said that he makes comments towards your body, the way you look, and that is just to bring the other person's self-esteem down. And I feel like all of these fits into the criteria of being emotionally abusive. And at the time, did you think these behaviors were normal?
Um, yeah, sort of. I mean, clearly they didn't make me feel good, whenever he would say these things to me, or I could see him, just scoping out the other women at events and stuff like that. Yeah, but I was like 23 at the time, so I didn't really have tons of dating experience and, didn't really see all these red flags. Looking back in retrospect, it's like, geez, I should have just cut him off immediately and never saw him again, but it was kind of hard to, because we all sort of knew the same people through the different groups that we were involved in. And then he started becoming friends with some of my friends too. So it made it harder to avoid him.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. When you're in the same social circle and you have mutual friends, it's harder to break that connection when you have the same group of friends. And I think that's understandable for the first time experiencing these type of things to not know that they're not okay, because when we're young, when we're starting off, we date different people and we learn different things from them, and it's not until much later we realize, wait, this actually doesn't happen to everybody. That was a unique case and that was not okay. I think you're not the only one. And how long did that relationship last?
Yeah. Well, I mean, once again, it's kind of hard to say, because at first we were just seeing each other at all these like OCA, the Chinese American Young Professional events, and different types of things that were going on around DC then. But I think like the whole, from the time that he was like trying to ask me out and trying to hang out and stuff till the very end, it was probably about like 6 or 7 months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that is a big long chunk, when you consider that law school is only 3 years. So like my grades probably would have been better if I had to deal with him and his craziness and all the stress of this like crappy relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I'm glad that was relatively short term.
Yeah.
And that you're able to realize that it wasn't healthy for you. Some people actually choose to stay in those type of relationships, and it progressively gets worse from there. It elevates to physical abuse, and and they get into a cycle in which they cannot get themselves out of it. So I do think that you were mature and you were self-aware to an extent. So would you say that it was traumatic, and did you suffer any types of PTSD from it?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was traumatic at the end. And the funny thing is that, once again, it wasn't me. I wasn't the one that really broke things off. It came to the point where, he started acting shadier and wasn't making plans with me or something. And, he didn't want to go with a group of our friends for some 4th of July fireworks, celebration type stuff. And I was like, well, something's going on. So I took the metro all the way out to Silver Spring and went over to his apartment. And lo and behold, I could hear voices, coming from his door. And I kind of like was eavesdropping for a little bit. And sure enough, I heard like the clink of dishes or something and some woman's voice. And so I knocked on the door, and there he was, like having dinner, cooking dinner for some woman that I had never met before.
Yeah.
Because he'd go to all these events and stuff. And since I was in law school, there would be times when I really had to study and couldn't go out and have fun all the time. So if I wasn't going out and about, then clearly he was going out and around looking for other women and stuff. So yeah, I mean, that was very traumatic to go there and then find out that, oh, okay, so he was in fact, seeing this other woman. I mean, he later told me that it was their first time like having dinner together or something, because later on we did meet up one last time where I was very mad and disgusted with him. Yeah. So yeah, I just remember feeling totally stunned. It felt like my mind was racing and stuff as I left that apartment, after I went in there and confronted him and took out some of the stuff that I still had in his bathroom in the apartment. And then I just like, left him with that woman. And I'm sure that woman was like, what the heck just happened? Yeah. I hope she never saw him again, but who knows what, because he could be very charming and, he always liked to go out to fancy, expensive restaurants and could like make the woman feel special for a certain amount of time. Yeah. But I just felt so like bizarre. It was like buzzed, like I couldn't even think. My head, I was like kind of shaking, riding that metro train back from Silver Spring to go back and meet up with my friends again out in Northern Virginia. It was just like the worst feeling ever, to feel really betrayed and treated like crap.
I see. Yeah, it sounds like it got to the point where it also affected your physical well-being. Like you're starting to feel the symptoms of the stress you were receiving. And for women, research have shown this, women treat emotional adultery. Women are more affected by emotional adultery and affairs that involve being emotionally connected to another person. So would you say that like if you were to have caught him in bed instead of having dinner and doing something romantic and intimate with another girl, would you have how would you feel the same, or would you feel differently?
I don't know. I never thought about that question, but I probably would have felt about the same if I had, but it's not, I think at that point, I don't think I had a key to his apartment or anything like that. So it wouldn't have been likely that I would like burst in on the scene or something.
Yeah.
But still, just to know, like, even though he had already given me that red flag earlier, to let me know that he was still going to keep his eye out for other women or still wanted to be able to date other people and stuff. But then to actually have it happen and smack in my face, I was just like, what a a-hole, especially since we were already, physically intimate and stuff, I mean, it was just like a real betrayal. Like what a total dirtbag. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would be just as affected too if I were to see my partner doing something romantic with another person. It would be the same level as me catching him in bed, because I feel like I've lost him in terms of the emotional connection. He feels closer to another person than me. I think that severity is just as much as him having a physical affair. And I'm sure a lot of women would agree with this. So moving on to the next question, did you talk to anyone about it or seek advice?
Yeah, I didn't get any professional counseling or professional advice or anything, but I definitely talked about it a lot to, my friends, and, I have two
Yeah.
sisters, so I did talk to them also, but it's not like anybody was that experienced in dating or anyone. I mean, I certainly wasn't going to talk to my mom really about it either, because I was never that close to my mom where I'd be
Uh-huh.
getting dating advice from her or anything. So, yeah, but it was difficult also because like a lot of my friends also knew this guy.
Yeah.
So they thought he was a good guy. And, he was always like the fun guy who would sometimes organize events, and, he had his own place. So he would have people over,
Like a good reputation.
yeah. So they just thought,
Mhm.
oh, well, he's a nice guy. Yeah. Too bad things didn't work out for you guys, but we're still all going to hang out with him and invite him to everything. So it
Yeah,
was still kind of made me feel bad too, that
I
some
see.
friends seemed to still hold that allegiance to be with this guy that I thought was a complete creep.
Yeah. And I think it's very common in abusers, manipulative abusers, where they appear very charming. They have a way with people, they have a way with the opposite sex. But once you uh, be in an intimate relationship with them, then their ugly sides start really to show. Their selfishness that come out, the verbal assaults come out, and I think mm, your friends, they only see how he is in social settings, but they don't see what type of person he really is in intimate relationships, and that is what defines a person's character.
Mhm.
Um, and I want to know how that impacted your self esteem, and did it affect your work or performance and social ability as well? Did it make you feel anxious at the time?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Well, back then I was a law student, so just being in this kind of like bad relationship definitely did, distract me and keep me from focusing on just doing well in school and everything. But that summer I was working as an intern for the Fairfax County, Virginia Public Defender's Office. So, I don't think it really affected my work performance there, because it was kind of a nice distraction, to go to the public defender's office and just focus on the cases and then run around to go to court and work with the attorneys and stuff. So that was a welcome distraction. So I didn't keep thinking about the betrayal and this jerk that I had finally gotten out of a relationship from.
I see.
So yeah, but it definitely, made me feel bad. And later on, when I did meet some guy that seemed to be really great, like the polar opposite, I think I came on too strong because I was too excited to actually meet somebody that was so nice and was really a
Aw,
really good person, not just
aw.
putting on for show because he wanted to get girls. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It kind of like changed your uh the things you're looking for. It kind of changed your values in a relationship as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
because at least it was a good learning experience,
Yeah.
crummy as I felt for those months, at least it was a good learning experience not to get involved with somebody like that again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And from what you shared earlier, it seems like his negative comments about your body also created body image issue for you. And were there any like symptoms of eating disorder?
Well, I mean, only very slightly because, like I might have mentioned, I do like to eat. So I don't think I could really starve myself if I really wanted to.
Good.
But
That's good.
there was at least a short period of time where I tried not to eat anything all
Oh,
day
I
or
see.
tried to eat very little, after he
Yeah.
was constantly saying that I was overweight and I needed to lose weight and stuff like that. But one time we did meet up later that day, and I told him that, look, I haven't even eaten anything all day, because I'm trying to lose weight. And I kind of like almost yelled at him because I was like so disgusted and fed up with him. So,
Angry.
again, it was all just these like red flags all around. So I'm
Yeah.
really glad that, thank God, I didn't waste any more time with this person, and it's all for the
Uh-huh.
best that
Yeah.
he ended up having that date with a woman and I caught him. So at least that finally ended things.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like now that you look back and think back on that memory, you think it was a good thing that it was able to motivate you to get out of that relationship quickly.
Yeah,
Um,
finally. Sometimes you do need that wake up call. And, speaking of domestic violence, though, because, this wasn't like a domestic violence situation, he never laid a hand on me or anything. But
yeah.
I do see a lot of women in domestic violence situations where, they need that wake up call. But sometimes, even when they get beat up or pushed down the stairs or something, like sometimes they still go back to the abuser. And it's just this like very sad cycle. It's like, what are you waiting for? Why do you keep staying with the person? But it's a very complex situation, especially if they have kids together. So
Yeah, it is. Yeah, definitely. And when we're talking about domestic violence, there's a chart called the power and control wheel, which shows the different aspects of abuse. There's physical abuse and there's also emotional abuse, using money as a leverage, taking advantage of somebody's financial situation, knowing that they cannot be financially independent, being controlling of their social life, minimizing, denying, blaming, gaslighting, using verbal assault and also intimidation, making us feel fearful for our safety. So how many of these type of violence did you experience from this person at the time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it was not like physical violence, but I would say, just part of it with the manipulation, especially with getting to know my friends and then just kind of insinuating himself in with my social circle. But then because of him knowing more people through me, then that gave him more opportunities to meet other women and look at other women and stuff. So I do remember when we had our final relationship talk after that night. I remember telling him that I was kind of pissed off that he had gotten to know all of my friends and was kind of like, now there was going to be this wedge between the people that we mutually knew, because some people would still think that he's some great guy and keep inviting him to events and stuff and doing stuff with him, and I wanted no part of that. So it was very awkward for a while, when I was still living around DC and still had to see him at some events.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely impacted your social life.
Yeah, it did. But, but definitely in terms of the power wheel, though, yeah, in many unhealthy relationships, it is complicated where if the man has the money or, you're married to somebody who you're financially dependent on, or if you have kids and that you can't afford to let him lose his job, even if you complain about domestic violence, because you're going to have money for your family. It is very a complex situation regarding why some women stay and continue to be abused. One who's so terrible to them.
Very true. So were you able to recover from that relationship quickly, or did you have to work on some emotional issues that arose?
Yeah, definitely the latter. It wasn't anything like, oh, I'm fine after 2 months or anything like that. Like I said, I was still meeting other people because, DC is like this huge metropolitan area, lots of fun, lots of single young professionals and everything. So, but I think I was kind of on the rebound after that, after being treated like crap. And, I was just, still out there. I felt a little crappy having nobody, and and then kind of threw myself at this other guy who was like the complete opposite of this person and kind of scared him away. And then I ended up meeting my first husband again. I had already known him many years prior. But we happened to meet up in DC again at just randomly at some like Asian Pacific American Domestic Violence Resource Project fundraiser. And so, he was just like so enamored with me and so loving and wonderful that, I was just so happy after getting out of a crappy relationship. And I think maybe that's why we kind of rushed things and I got married so quickly. Because of reverberations of having had that crappy relationship and then finally meeting someone that seemed so into me.
I could see it. Yeah, I could see that. So like you had a juxtaposition, like you had a terrible, terrible relationship to compare to, and then you get into one that made you feel good. And you feel like, oh, this is so much better than what I had. I'm not suffering anymore. And then it gives you the misconception that this is good enough. I think that's a common aftermath. That's a common effect of having been through trauma.
Yeah.
And now, have you ever wondered why he behaved the way he did? What types of upbringings and experiences do you think he must have had that could have led to the development of this narcissistic personality?
Yeah. Well, I actually did think about it over the last couple of days. I mean, I really haven't thought about this person at all for quite some time because it was a while ago. But I think, first of all, he was from this well-off family, and he was the only son and the oldest child in this family. And, he was successful. He had gone to Harvard. just very academically successful. So I'm sure he was sort of, had that upbringing where everyone always praised him and thought he was great and stuff. So he never had to do any self-reflection about his deficiencies or work on his
Yeah.
personality or his
Yeah.
interpersonal relationships in
Uh-huh.
depth.
Yeah.
And then from what I recall, like his parents didn't seem to have a really happy marriage, even though they were still married for a really long time. But he would tell me sometimes his parents would have arguments and the mom would just say, we're just not compatible, and that would be the end of it. Yeah. So I do find it kind of weird that, from what I know, this guy, yeah, he's divorced now. He married a former friend of mine, and then she left him. And as far as I know, he's still unmarried and probably out on the prowl for young women and stuff. So, and then neither of his siblings, as far as I know, has gotten married or had kids either. So, I mean, maybe there has been something wrong with their upbringing or what kind of role models they had from their parents.
Yeah, that's something to think about. It seems like this person values his profession, his education as his proudest identity capital, to the point it might blind him from working on um, his virtues, his morality. And it sounds like he didn't have a stable family, a stable family environment in which his parents had a lot of fights. And like you said, it might not have been good role models there for him to show him what is the right way to have intimate relationships. And he might be mimicking some of the behaviors that he's seen or he's that's been acted upon him. Um, do you think that's justified?
Um, Not really, because like from an intellectual standpoint, he was very intelligent academically. So, if your relationships keep like floundering and stuff, you would think that eventually somebody would think like, okay, maybe there's something wrong with me, or maybe I need to go to therapy or learn how
Yeah.
to work on relationships. Because
Yeah.
clearly, he's capable of having friendships. He has lots of friends. People thought he was a nice guy and stuff, but anything that was more in depth, or knowing how to treat somebody correctly, treat a girlfriend correctly, like he just was kind of screwed up in that respect. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, not saying that I'm perfect. I mean, clearly everybody's screwed up in some respect, right? But I kind of feel like, yeah, I mean, he needed some serious therapy or something, but at his late age, I don't know if anything can be done at this point.
Yeah. And I'm really glad you answered that. And it's never justified, in my personal opinion, it's never justified for anyone to continue that behavior pattern, regardless of what type of upbringing or family background they came from. Um, it we can understand why they behave that way, but we shouldn't tolerate it and accept it. And it's not justifiable for anyone to continue that behavior onto the next girl and turn it into a pattern. And so this brings on to our next question. Do you forgive him and do you think he's changed?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I never really thought much about like, do I forgive him or not? Because it still makes me a little bit angry, after all these
Yeah.
years to think back to,
Yeah,
the
of
things that he
course.
put me through and
Of
the rude
course.
things that he did to me and the rude things he said to me. It just made me very skeptical of people after that to have been treated like crap by somebody.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I would just say, I don't really forgive him, but I've definitely moved on with my life. I'm happy with the way things turned out. I'm happy that I didn't end up marrying somebody like him, so good riddance, like it's all part of a learning pattern, like with every relationship you go through, even though if it turns out to be a bad relationship, well, at least try to get out of it, move on, and think about, what lessons did I learn from this person? Can I at least quote thank this person for teaching me blank, teaching me, to catch these
Yeah.
red flags and not be with someone that clearly doesn't want an exclusive relationship. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
I
lesson.
think that's a very mature understanding. Um, because one, it's been a long time and the years have passed and some of the anger might have went away and diminished. And it takes a lot of time and courage to say that you have forgotten about this and you don't let it impact your the present and the future anymore. However, whenever you think back on it, because of the severity and the traumatic seriousness of the event, you still, your emotions still get elicited. You still feel down, and you still feel that negative energy, and it comes back whenever you whenever you um, dwell on it, whenever you think about it in detail. And I think that's the signs of something that, I think that's evident that it was truly traumatic for you. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, after a while, it's like, well, what am I going to do in the future? How do I move on from this? And it has been so long that, I don't want people out there to think like, well, so many years have passed, but she's still talking about it, So that's kind of why I didn't really want to tell my Facebook friends about me being on this interview, because some of them, were my friends back then and they know the person and stuff. And they'll probably be like, because I do remember like mentioning it probably like half a year or so after this incident happened with that guy. I mentioned it at some like group dinner. And then one of my male friends was just like, oh, get over it. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll just stop talking about it. But, that's the attitude, like some people who are your quote friends, when you bring up things that were traumatic in your life, some of them will just kind of laugh you off and be like, oh, just get over it. Yeah, that's over with. And then you kind of realize, okay, well, this is why people pay to see therapists, because sometimes your quote friends don't even want to hear about your problems, and they just get over it and move on, and they don't want to talk about it anymore. So, but I mean, again, to make it positive though, it's good to know that sometimes there are going to be people out there in the dating world that are just not relationship worthy. They're just bad relationship material. And it's nothing personal against you. You just need to know how to avoid certain people like that.
Yeah. So similar question, what advice would you give to others, whether it's girls or boys, that find themselves in an abusive relationship like this one?
Yeah, well, number one, you need to value yourself and realize that that's not normal. It's not healthy. There are going to be plenty of other people out there that are going to treat you well. You deserve to be treated politely and to not be, emotionally abused or physically abused. That's not normal behavior. And, sometimes it is important to go to counseling or therapy, to recognize these abusive traits of some people that you might run into. So that you don't so you're not taken advantage of. And also, as I was mentioning earlier, I do feel like a lot of these red flags, they're there already when you're dating the person. So why continue to be in the relationship with the person? Why get married to someone like that? If there are all these like red flags where the person is being controlling or already hitting you, or already, looking at other people, or cheating on you, or, has a drinking problem, drug problem, whatever weird addiction, then run away as quickly as you can, because you're just going to waste more time. You're not going to change the person, especially when the person is already in their 30s and they're still acting like that. Because, as a divorce and custody attorney, I've seen so many, bad relationships gone wrong. And the more I talk to the people, the more I realize, okay, so there were plenty of red flags. The person was already drinking a lot and falling down drunk and, throwing up. And, the person was already controlling you or trying to separate you from your friends and family. The person was already gambling or a porn addict or whatever, but you still married him, or you still had children with this person, so red flags abound. Don't settle for less. There's plenty of fish in the sea, and especially like someone like you, if you're in your 20s, there's still plenty of time and opportunity. So don't settle for less. Relationships aren't going to get any better once you get married. In fact, they're more likely to get worse, especially after you have kids. So so everything better be hunky-dory before you walk down the aisle and get married to somebody. Because, many times looking back, people say, oh yeah, I should have known. Or, oh yeah, there were some signals that I should have picked up on before I got married to that person.
Yeah, I think that's a very good tip, that you have to be aware of the challenges ahead of being married and having kids. So this person has to be absolutely compatible with you, and if not, at least willing to compromise and work on it. And it'll only get more difficult, and more conflicts will arise because of being with a person every day and sharing life with them. So like you said, really think about your decision and choosing the right partner in order to ensure that it'll continue to be a healthy and stable relationship down the road.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
for
Yeah.
that. I think that's a very valuable tip.
Mhm.
So now we're going to shift gears a little bit and move away from that negative experience. Thank you so much for sharing. Spent about 40 minutes talking about it. That was very difficult. So thank you so much,
Okay.
Judy. So let's talk about the other types of relationships that aren't very traumatic, but doesn't really add to our mental well-being, our mental health either. So the first question I want to ask, have you ever been in a relationship where it made you feel stagnant in life, where it made you feel stuck, lethargic, and bored?
Mhm.
Do you think the unsatisfying relationship prevented you from growing, changing, and becoming a better version of yourself?
Mhm. Yeah, and so that's when, I mean, the first time I really thought about that was today. So yeah, I think it would have to be that college relationship I was in for 3 years,
Mhm.
because when you're just a teenager, really, you're still in college, you're still growing a lot and stuff. That's really the time that you should be, experiencing new things, doing different activities and stuff. But once I had this boyfriend, I was just kind of so happy to finally have, like a devoted boyfriend and stuff. And we were happy together for the most part. But as the time went on, it did get stagnant because I wasn't socializing as much with other people or doing the same activities that I used to do on
Mhm.
campus anymore. I was just spending all my time over at my boyfriend's apartment. He had a condo because he came from a wealthy family and they bought him a condo at Berkeley. But um, yeah, so looking back, I do remember a friend of mine had made a comment saying like, "Oh yeah, Judy used to be like this really fun activist person, but ever since she met so and so, like she just like spends all her time with that with him." And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, that is true what happened because, before I was in this relationship, I was very active in different student activities and
Mhm.
doing a lot of like activist stuff and writing for the school paper and things like that. But once I was with him, it's just like he just wanted me to be with him all the time and be over at his condo and just kind of almost like a smothering relationship where you stop growing, you stop experiencing things. Because looking back, I kind of feel like when I was in college, I really should have done like study abroad or, gone to Taiwan to learn Chinese or something fun and exciting, instead of just spending all my time at Berkeley because I wanted to be with my boyfriend. I
Mm.
mean, that was too
Yeah.
young. You shouldn't be
Yeah.
stuck in a relationship like that with one person for so long when you're only like 19 or 20 when you start a relationship.
Yeah. And I think I am guilty of that too. I also, similarly to you, I had a boyfriend during college, and same thing. Like that was the only thing I would do. I didn't really have much social life. That was the only thing I did with my free time, is to spend time with my boyfriend at the time. And I think it made me feel lazy and less driven because I was so comfortable with that person. It made me feel unmotivated. I wasn't adventurous. And I think that that's not negatively impacting our mental health, but it's not helping either. So that's why we have to keep in mind, um, when we say a healthy relationship, it's one that fosters growth. It's one that makes you want to become a better version of yourself, somebody that motivates you to want to be better. So in this particular case, I think people that get in too comfortable, relationships that are way too comfortable, that's something to reflect on, because it doesn't have much positive impact on our mental health.
Mhm.
And have you ever been in a relationship with someone you didn't like or wasn't very attracted to?
Yeah, and this is again, it's kind of like sad or kind of embarrassing to talk about because I do like this person as a person. We're actually Facebook friends still, but it's not like we're really in touch or anything. It's been so long. But there was somebody that was um, he's a really good guy. He was also Taiwanese American and he was a doctor. So of course, all the families and the family friends are all giddy about that, like, "Ooh, he's a doctor." And but ultimately I wasn't that physically attracted to him. And just like, sometimes being around him, it did seem, like you said, stagnant, like, okay, I'm just like sitting around watching TV with this person, and, we're not even having any good conversations or anything. And, you know, I think like ultimately that relationship just kind of fell by the wayside also because, I was in law school and it was a long distance relationship. So it's kind of hard to keep that, romance alive when you don't even see the person and it's just like a phone call at night and, seeing each other every whatever 2 or 3 months and stuff. So, so yeah, that relationship, like yeah, a lot of it was just that we were not very compatible. He was into cross-dressing and S&M. So, things that I wasn't particularly interested in. And as far as I know, he's still single, never married. But yeah, I mean, ultimately he was a very good guy. For the most part, he treated me well and stuff, but I just didn't really feel the spark after a while. I think part of it was just that I was excited that somebody was so into me and he seemed to check off all the boxes and stuff, but the real attraction wasn't there. So
Yeah. I think that's another important tip for our viewers. Even though this person may fit all the criteria you're looking for, and they may check your boxes of what you look for in a partner. But if that attraction, that chemistry isn't there, it's going to be very hard to continue the relationship, to make the relationship alive. It tends to make people feel angry, bitter, or irritated all the time because they are not being fulfilled. They're not being satisfied because of the lack of attraction. So when we think about relationships, you have to remember that it needs to be one that promotes greater empathy and greater self-esteem, greater confidence in us, not one that makes us feel less empathetic, not one that makes us feel less excited about life. It should be a relationship where it improves our mood, not making us more prone to anxiety or depression. So that's something to keep in mind when we're choosing a partner and deciding what's important in a relationship. Okay, Judy, the last question I want to ask doesn't have to be your own experience, doesn't have to be your personal story. Have you ever came across relationships that exemplify codependency, where both partner enable each other's negative thoughts, they validate each other's negative thinking patterns, negative behaviors, unhealthy habits?
Yeah, not really. I don't think in myself, but definitely, doing divorce cases or child custody cases, I do see a lot of those kinds of relationships. And that's why they wind up in court, because, sometimes when somebody comes in griping to me about how terrible their ex is and puts them down and stuff, sometimes I later find out that my client or the person I'm talking to, they themselves also have a drinking problem or some sort of, drug addiction, or they've had problems, like just all sorts of like mental health problems and things like that. So the more you work with people, the more you realize there are always two sides to every story. And sometimes people that both have the same problems wind up being attracted to each other and they feed off of each other. For example, I did have well, this has applied to multiple clients, so I don't think that I'm singling out anybody in particular. But let's say, someone's complaining about the person being a big drunk and stuff, then it later turns out that the other person also was a big drunk and, liked to party all the time. They would all get drunk together, or they would smoke weed together or do drugs together. Or, in terms of finances too, sometimes both people are financial wrecks and they just somehow are attracted to each other, and it becomes a total mess or a total financial disaster too. So there are just like so many red flags that you can spot that sometimes it makes you wonder, how do people actually like get married, or find the right person or something. But there's definitely like some red flags that you should run away from, like, someone with a drinking problem or drug problem, or someone that's physically abusive or emotionally abusive towards you. Like those relationships, you don't need to be the savior, the person that's going to fix this person with a broken wing. Don't sacrifice your own mental health for somebody else like that, especially if you're not even married or related to them. Not worth it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Um, yeah, it's true. Like sometimes people that tend to stay in those relationships, because it makes them feel like they're saving that person, they're nurturing them. They want to provide love, they want to be able to fix their brokenness.
Yeah.
And that itself is not healthy, and it's not healthy for neither of them. And that continues the cycle of abuse. So, Judy, now that you shared several of your past relationship experience, and you've also gotten remarried, and now you're in a happy long-term relationship with your partner, your lifelong partner, and you guys have kids, and you found your significant other in your life. So looking back, what have you learned comparing to all of these unsuccessful relationships that weren't healthy for your mental health? um, Compare them to the one that you have now that is fulfilling, stable, and happy. So how do you know that you found the one? How do you know that you're in a healthy relationship?
Mhm. Well, in a way, you kind of just know it. Once you become more mature and you've met
Yeah.
tons and tons of people, you've gone through different dating relationships. Really, I kind of feel this sounds like it's kind of unattainable, but I really feel like you should be almost 100% satisfied, with the person. And then,
Yeah.
like, wow, this is really the person for me because, this person has these qualities, or, you get along with their family. That's another thing, like, we haven't really talked much about, but really, if you're looking in terms of marriage partners versus just dating around and having a good time or something, you really have to get to know the person's family too, and see how they treat you and how your future potential spouse interacts with their family, because that really has a lot to do with your happiness later when you're married and you have family obligations, or you have to go visit the relatives and deal with their problems, or maybe deal with elderly parents as they get older and they need your help, or maybe, God forbid, they might move in with you. So it is very important to get to know the person's family and how they get along, get to know the person's like friends and stuff. So definitely don't rush anything. But if you're already miserable and, feeling unloved, feeling disrespected, or, the person's just playing games with you already, or being abusive, then just run away as quickly as possible. There's just like, especially when you're young, there's
Mhm.
plenty of time. There's lots of other people that you could be meeting and stuff. And don't settle for less. You deserve
Mhm.
to have a happy marriage or happy relationship. So
Mhm.
sometimes when I look at a lot of my friends, I would say like maybe a third of my friends and relatives, or maybe a fourth, have gotten divorced already. And
Mhm.
you don't want to wind up divorced, because divorce is usually a very traumatic, terrible thing too. But
Yeah.
a lot of times you can see like, oh, they were already complaining about the person, already having fights a lot with the person before they even got married.
Yeah.
So really, when you feel really happy with the person, say like 99% of the time, then that's probably like a good match for you. Yeah, anything less, it's, don't waste your time. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, hearing about it, 99%, that sounds like a very high percentage. And you just wonder, like, am I ever going to find somebody who makes me happy 99% of the time? Um, but I think it's valid. And I think that's a very good tip. Because as we said earlier, there's only going to be more room for conflict as you get ready to share your life with the other person. So, in all areas, both of you guys really have to be willing to work on each other's shortcomings and be accepting and tolerant of each other and be able to grow together.
Yeah.
Um, so, we do have one audience question, and this refers to the toxic relationship we were talking about earlier. Would it help to let other women know what the guy you were seeing treated you? Warning other women that he knew or you knew, um, people in your social circle, would it be helpful to alert others that he was doing this to all of you guys?
Mhm. Well, I mean, like I mentioned, the funny thing was that he ended up marrying a former friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then she ended up, realizing that he was pretty crummy, and she left him.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I remember talking to her right before my first wedding, because I had invited her, and
Mm-hmm.
she didn't let me know that she was already dating this guy until like right before my wedding. And she's like, yeah, I don't know if you still want me to come to your wedding because I'm dating blankety blank. And I was telling her, look, I've already told you before, about the way that he treated me. He was very manipulative, and I think he's very rude and self-centered and stuff. And she didn't want to hear about it. She was just like, well, I think he's changed. I think he's changing. Like, I really like the way that, like, he just asked me out when none of the other guys would ask me out after I broke up with the other person. And, like, he's just very confident and stuff. I was like, okay, whatever, and she had this bumpy relationship with him. And, as far as I know, he didn't cheat on her, but he was just like acting very self-centered and obsessed, addicted to computer games, and just probably just being disrespectful in general to her. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not even in touch with her anymore. I think she cut off all ties with our mutual friends after she got divorced from the guy.
I
But
see.
it's funny how life turns out,
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of women will still think like, oh, well, but he treats me so nicely, things are going to be different, So even if you try to warn somebody, sometimes people just need to find out for themselves. Like,
they have this mentality that this wouldn't happen to me. It's not going to happen to me. And also a distorted perception of reality, and fulfilling the fantasy in their head and not seeing for what it is. I mean, an interesting question to think about. Do you think if you were to share your story today in this current society with our current climate, do you think it would have been more accepted? And do you think more people would be willing to listen to it? And more girls and your friends, your mutual friends in that circle, would be more willing to trust what you shared and take it more seriously?
um, that I'm not really sure, because I think the way people interact is still sort of the same, even though now
Yeah.
everybody's got social media and there are tons and tons of dating apps that you can scroll through and look at all these people, and everybody's being judged by their photographs and how hot they look and their Instagram and TikTok, stuff like that. Yeah, so I think the dating environment has definitely gotten a lot more like complicated, where maybe it's even harder to get a real committed relationship if people are constantly being tempted, or you don't know if somebody's out there still scrolling around looking at other people's profiles and stuff. Like, people always think that they're going to find someone better, maybe. Yeah, so I'm not really sure if my story would really have like a different reception now compared to then, because I still think human nature is the same, where people think like, well, that's not going to happen to me, and I'm different, and that's why this person, even though he has a track record of being like a total jerk to women, like, oh, well, that's because you guys weren't compatible and things are going to be different for me. So yeah, because I see that also in my divorce / custody clients, where people have been through multiple marriages already, or have different baby daddies or baby mamas and stuff, and I'm like, okay, so you thought things were going to be different, dating this guy, even though you knew he was already out on whatever, back then it was Craigslist personals, looking for other women when he was married with a kid. Yeah, it's like there are some women that just don't want to listen to that because they think they're special and they're going to change the guy, or the guy is different, or they're the right one. That's why the guy's going to change for them. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you bring up an interesting point, because now 2020, society has really seen a progression in awareness of mental health and mental illness. But what you said is true, like human nature tends to stay the same. Even though we do have this elevated sense of awareness of mental health and toxic relationships, domestic violence, and mental illnesses, there's still going to be people that get caught up and entrenched in abusive relationships like this. So this is why our efforts can't cease, can't stop just now. And there's still a lot of work to be done. And even though we see a lot more people coming out with their stories, a lot more campaigns and social activism, it is continuing to happen every day to different individuals under the covers, behind the doors. So this is a call to action for our viewers and audience listening. If you see something, if you hear something, please reach out. And also the audience, if you have some questions about your mental health, please do take the initiative to seek trusted medical advice from licensed mental health professional. And also down below this video, we also have several links to several mental health support services with a lot of education tools for you to look at. And please take some time to check that out. There's a lot of helpful resource that offers support groups in your local area. That is a good resource for you to explore during COVID. And also just practicing self-care and self-reflection and self-awareness. And I think it's a useful tool. And now, before we leave, we want to remind everyone that this video is for entertainment purposes only, and that you should not see this as medical advice, but instead seek professional, trusted providers and licensed mental health professionals if you have any questions about your condition. So I want to give a shout out to Judy. She's also a content creator on YouTube. And guys, if you have time, please check out her YouTube channel. Judy, do you want to say a few things about your content?
Thank you. Thanks so much. Yeah, my YouTube channel is called Asian American Legal Focus. And I just started it in late May because of the whole shutdown orders after COVID and stuff. So I was kind of bored and stuck at home all the time and watching a lot of YouTube. And I was like, hey, why don't I make my own videos and stuff? Especially since I can't go ice skating anymore. That used to be my big hobby. So I did sort of want it to be like your channel at first, doing more interviews with people, but for some reason, like most of my Zoom interviews turned out too dark and grainy and, just like bad camera angles, not enough lighting and stuff. And so I've started doing more like legal focused stuff since I'm an attorney. So I figured that's my added value to the viewers is, throwing in some legal commentary or legal information. But I do try to make it a little bit fun. And my next video is going to be about a trip to the Boba Baba Cafe, which I think is a bubble tea place in North Carolina.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
I also discuss some legal issues too. So it's a legal issue mukbang.
Okay, so it sounds like it's a mixture of education and travel vacation type of lifestyle vlog.
Some Asian American themes, things like that. I'm still kind of playing around with what the audience prefers. Yeah, so it's not all just boring legal topics. Although some of the boring legal topics have actually gotten tons of views because there are some like law students or people about going to law school or trying to start up their own law practice that found my channel. So I appreciate everybody's support.
Oh, I'm happy to hear that.
Thanks, and I hope your channel grows too. I'll definitely tell more people about it.
Thank you. So big thank you to Judy and a big thank you to the audience that took the time to tune in. We hope you were able to walk away with something new. Hopefully you learned something about relationships. And please let us know your feedback. If you like to participate in our future mental health videos, please contact us in our social media outlets. Next week, we'll be having an episode on seeing a therapist for the first time, how to shop, compare, and finding the therapist that's the right fit for you. If you're interested, please stay tuned next Saturday at the same time. That's it for this episode. Thank you for watching and see you next time.
Thank you.